Well, hello, everybody. I am Tanya once again. I'm going to give you a couple of announcements. First of all, I want to encourage you to participate in the collaborative storytelling project we have. It's on our Discord, and you'll just scroll down to collaborative storytelling, and it's just hashtag the story. And I would love to hear. There's been a few of us who are like, "Yeah, let's do this," because we're all writers and excited. We would love to hear your contributions. So yeah, we're going to be reading that story in the next session. So that should be super fun and exciting. And let's see. Okay. And then, so I also want to introduce our next speaker. Let me get my notes out. So, all right. Well, so this is Reverend Paul Schneider, and we're familiar here at Doxacon Seattle with Reverend Paul because last year he presented this amazing talk on hope punk theology. And it looks like we already have a request for maybe a brief overview of what that is, but great presentation, generated a lot of discussion last year at Doxacon Seattle. So we're super happy to welcome you back, Reverend Paul. And so Reverend Paul is a graduate of the Berkeley School of Theology, which was formerly the American Baptist Seminary of the West, where his master's project was the creation of the Oasis Project, an interfaith ministry of presence for conventions, which is awesome. Paul is a lifelong fan of science fiction and fantasy across many types of media, has been playing all kinds of games, especially tabletop RPGs, as both player and storyteller since grade school. He is co-contributor of Hope Punk Theology with Reverend Mindy Welton Mitchell. So welcome back, Reverend Paul. I'm going to go ahead and dip out, or at least silence and mask myself, and I will turn it over to you.
Great. Well, first, I just want to emphasize, I had a lot of fun with the Hope Punk Theology talk last year, but that was actually something that I co-presented with the Reverend Mindy Welton Mitchell, who, if she wasn't driving across the country today, I'm sure would probably have been here with us, even if she wasn't presenting. So, that being said, maybe at the end, if we've got some questions about Hope Punk Theology, I'd be glad to give something of an overview. I really enjoyed our time at Doxacon last year, and so I was really excited to come back. I'm actually doing doctoral work now at the Berkeley School of Theology around the intersections of the church and pop culture, which kind of what you guys do. So I'm really excited to be here and glad to present again. So if it's all right, I'm just going to get started. I'll be sharing my screen at a couple of points here, but if you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. I may not answer them in real time, but I'll certainly work to get at them at the end. And I know Tanya will help me keep track of things. So let's go ahead and get started. So, Ron Howard's 1988 fantasy movie, Willow, has always been one of my favorites. It was actually the first fantasy movie that I saw in a theater. I'm not sure if it was the title character's size or the story that so captured my imagination when I was younger, but as I grew older, one of the things that I came to realize watching this movie again and again and again was that Willow's journey was not dissimilar to the path of faith. And so, I started to appreciate the wisdom of the High Aldwin, the sorcerer and spiritual leader of the Nelwyn people who sets Willow on his path and kind of encourages him on his journey, even as I was having people in my own faith community encourage me on my journey and helping me hear and answer my own call to ministry. Now serving as a pastor in ministry, in some different church contexts, I see over and over the things about Willow that I identified with are even more common than I thought. They don't just apply to my life, but they seem to apply more generally. And so, well, I wouldn't want to say that every spiritual life includes all of the same things. I think many of these things might apply in different ways to different spiritual journeys. I'm going to focus primarily on three characters in this talk. And the first of them, of course, is Willow Ufgood. He's the primary protagonist of the film. He's one of the Nelwyn, or the little people of this world. He's an aspiring sorcerer, and he's the character that changes the most over the course of the story. I would say his biggest flaw that gets called out is his ability to doubt himself, which I think many of us maybe share. The next is we're going to talk a little bit about the High Aldwin, mostly in kind of his context as the spiritual leader of his people, and in the ways that he encourages people. And in some ways acts as a model for Willow in a really, really kind of significant and positive way. And then the third person is Madmartigan, who's kind of the other major character in the story, the other person who we see the most growth out of. He's a thief, a swordsman, and a person who's really in search of meaning. And also a person who serves as kind of an unlikely source of kindness and grace to Willow at certain specific points. There's another character in the film, and she's a little bit more, almost to some degree, of a living plot point, maybe, because her interactions are extremely limited on account of the fact that she's an infant. So the plot of Willow centers on this infant girl, Elora Danon, who's destined to bring about the downfall of the rule of the evil sorceress Queen Madmartigan. I apologize. I should start off and I should give a significant spoiler warning. We're pretty much going to go through the whole plot of the movie. So if you haven't seen it, go see it. But if you have, by all means, but we're going to follow Willow's journey through this story. And so, I'll be highlighting that. But Elora Danon is actually really interesting. As I was doing research for this, some of the things that I found out were that Elora is laden with connotation for a variety of reasons. First off, if you look at her name, Elora is actually a Greek name meaning sun ray. And Danon is an audio cognate to Danann, as in the Tuatha de Danann, who were mythologically speaking the people who first inhabited Ireland. Their name translates to the folk of the goddess Danu, and we don't actually have any myths about the goddess Danu. We have myths about her descendants or her followers. They were kind of the gods of Ireland, but from what we can tell, what we can reconstruct, she's thought to represent fertility and the earth. And so in a lot of ways, Elora Danon is then light and the earth. And then she has a special mark that identifies her. And that's how everybody knows that she is in fact this special girl. And it vaguely looks like the letter Shin, the Hebrew letter Shin, which is the beginning of the word shalom, which of course means peace. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that just kind of by existing, because again, she doesn't really take any actions of her own, but actions are taken on her behalf. She brings about peace and restores a land that's racked by evil to abundance and light and life. And so that I thought was kind of interesting. This movie has a whole bunch of biblical themes running through it. We start off with Elora Danon being this special child who was born, and the evil Queen Bavmorda, the sorceress, knows that there's a child who is destined to bring about her downfall. And so she has captured all of the pregnant women in the realm and is holding them prisoner as they give birth one by one, and is, each child that's born, if it's a girl, they're looking for that mark on the arm. And so when Alora is born, the mark is seen, and as Bavmorda's servants go off to let her know that the child has been born, Alora's mother begs the midwife to help her. And so we have this very Moses kind of moment where we have a midwife who takes this very brave stand, this very brave action, not unlike Shifra and Pua, the midwives in Egypt, and she takes Alora and she runs away with her. And while it only takes a few moments of screen time, the amount of time that she's with Alora must be several months. We can tell by the way her hair grows in this time, from being nearly bald to having the red curls that she has throughout the rest of the movie. And so she's been on the run. This midwife is on the run the entire time. Finally, she gets cornered by Bavmorda's hunters, these sort of dog-like beasts, and she, kind of in desperation, in an act of genuine faith, sends Alora down the river in her basket, which, if we'll remember, is very much what happened with Moses. I think a big difference here is that Miriam kind of intentionally puts Moses into the river just upstream from the Pharaoh's daughter. And this midwife has no such knowledge. She kind of consigns Alora to the river with a hope and a prayer. Ultimately, what happens, though, is that Alora Dannon floats downriver and ends up bumping up on the riverbank by the land of Willow Ufgood, who's a Nelwyn farmer. Initially, his response after kind of finding her is just like, because she's obviously a human child, but he doesn't want to bring any trouble, right? He doesn't want to get in trouble. So his first thought is to try and push the baby back out into the river and let her float on. But there's a distraction that comes up, and as he steps away to deal with the distraction, his wife Kaya steps in. And by the time he gets back to the river, in some ways it's already too late. And so here's a little clip.
Oh, you're lovely. Yes, you are.
Kaya!
Oh, Willow. Good girl.
Absolutely. Under no condition whatsoever is anyone in this family to fall in love with that baby.
Yes, you are. Come on, then. Come on. Come on. There we are. Come on.
Hey, I will not be ignored. Mims, Brannon.
So I'll just say that in this moment, I mean, one of the things that I think is true is that Kaya, in the way that our loved ones sometimes do, kind of saves Willow from his own worst impulses. And it's an impulse that I think a lot of us share, to not let someone else's trouble darken our own doorstep. But instead, she takes in this child who needs help in this moment, and Willow and his family take care of the child. They fall in love with the child. They don't really know that she's a child of prophecy. They don't see anything particularly special about her. They just know that they found this child by the river and that it was a child in need, and so they want to help. One of the things that they do know, though, is that especially, things from outside the village, and especially, humans, the standard sized people, they call them daikini, right? They are viewed with suspicion, and Willow is actually really concerned that Alora's presence will bring condemnation on him. And so during the festival that kind of happens later, Willow takes his son and his daughter into the festival, but leaves Kaya and the baby behind so that nobody knows that she's there. And Willow aspires to be a sorcerer. He wants to become the apprentice of the High Aldwin, but that doesn't seem to be kind of what's going to happen. Willow keeps kind of hesitating. But we also see that Willow has another talent. He's not just a farmer. He's not just a father. He's not just, someone who is willing to help those in need, but he's also a prestidigitator, right? He performs sleight of hand, and the festival is interrupted by Bavmorda's hunting hounds, the creatures coming in, and they're clearly looking for babies. And one of the things that's interesting is Willow kind of presents in this not particularly brave way. He certainly doesn't seem to think of himself as brave through a large part of the movie. But when the creature is kind of rampaging through the village and his daughter is in danger, Willow immediately kind of leaps into action to save her, fearlessly running into danger to protect his daughter. And then once he has her, he takes her and he hides with her. And I don't know, he seems to sort of see this as overall cowardly, because he wasn't, fighting the creature itself like some of the other villagers did. But I think the seeds of bravery, and especially a bravery rooted in love, are already there. The Nelwyn village, having been disrupted like this, gathers to try and figure out what to do. And Willow brings the infant. He kind of confesses that they found the child and asks what should happen now. Some of the people are thinking that the child, that Willow should take the child back to human lands on his own. And others are like, we'll just put her back in the river and that kind of thing. And the High Aldwin, I'm going to share my screen again here. The High Aldwin steps in to offer a verdict. And what happens here, I think, is really interesting and very telling for the rest of this story.
I will consult the bones. The bones tell me nothing. Do you have any love for this child?
Yes. Yes, I do.
The bones have spoken!
So in a really significant way, it's Willow's love for the child that prompts Willow, becoming part of the expedition that's going to take this child to human lands. And so as he's leaving, the High Aldwin has some advice for him.
What's your problem, son?
How do you mean?
When I held up my fingers, what was your first impulse?
Well, it was stupid.
Just tell me.
Pick my own finger.
Aha. That was the correct answer. You lack faith in yourself. More than anyone in the village, you have the potential to be a great sorcerer. Now, when you're out there, listen to your own heart.
I really feel like throughout the rest of this movie, that advice is what guides Willow. And I feel like it is, in fact, good advice for all of us who are living lives of faith. And while certainly there are times when we have to be, I'll say we'll have to double check or check with our friends, check with our mentors about, what our desires are, ultimately, God created all of us to help one another, and generally, your impulse to do that is a positive thing. And so one of the things that occurs is as they get to human lands, they find a man trapped in a crow's cage. This is Madmartigan, the swordsman. And the first encounter with Madmartigan, he's in a desperate situation, right? He's trapped in this cage where he can't get out on his own, where he's going to starve to death, where he's already clearly very thirsty and needs, desperate for water. and you know, he tries to intimidate the Nelwyns, and he wants them to he tries to say, oh, I'll take the baby. And there's several in the Nelwyn group who just want to give him the child and move on. And Willow basically says, well, I'm a father and this man is not clearly a father, you know, displays none of the characteristics, right? But even despite his negative opinion of Madmartigan, Willow does take pity on him, and he shares water with him, even though he doesn't really trust him. That's not a requirement for showing kindness. Ultimately, many of the Nelwyns leave, but Willow is left with his friend, Migosh, who, you know, stays, even though the others are leaving. Even though Migosh is clearly afraid, he stays and to help Willow. And when other humans come by and they won't take the child either, Migosh and Willow kind of you know, have another conversation with Madmartigan, and he manages to convince them to in fact give him the baby. That maybe this will be the thing that turns his life around, right? He'll stop being someone who's irresponsible, stop being someone whose actions lead to things like being put in a crow's cage, and become a better person. And so they free him. They give him the child, and then they start heading home. And as they do so, this happens.
Migosh. Did we do the right thing?
Absolutely. There's nothing to worry about.
I stole the baby! I stole the baby! Yeah!
That's my baby! Stop, wait, come back!
So brownies have stolen the baby from Madmartigan, and Willow immediately jumps in to chase the baby to protect her. And that leads him kind of into a trap. And the brownies trap Willow and Migosh and then take them to see their queen, Cherlindrea. And Cherlindrea is an interesting figure here. I really think she's meant to be, and in fact is in the movie, this otherworldly spirit. But that includes, you know, anytime that someone in the Bible encounters a messenger of God, or many times, the first words out of their mouth are, "Be not afraid," right? I mean, this is for a variety of reasons, but not the least of which is they can be truly terrifying, beautiful, wonderful, awe-inspiring, but also terrifying. And Cherlindrea certainly counts. And as she's calling Willow to step up, to take Elora Den, and then also to keep her safe, and take a wand to the sorceress Finrazel, who's been trapped on an island in a Great Lake. And Willow, not unlike other prophets, not unlike Moses, who's already been kind of referenced again and again in this story, protests.
You need a warrior for a job like this. I'm a nobody. Elora, you don't want me. Tell her. I'm short, even for Nelwyn. Hello?
Elora Danan must survive. She must fulfill her destiny and bring about the downfall of Queen Madmartigan, whose powers are growing like an evil plague. Unless she is stopped, Madmartigan will control the lives of your village, your children, everyone. All creatures of good heart need your help, Willow. The choice is yours.
So after a night to sleep on it, he decides to take Alora and go find Finn Rizal. He lives up to the duty, to the call, and he's sent some help, a couple of brownies. He sends his friend Migosh home with a message for his family, and then answers this call. He's sort of taking a step of faith and listening to his heart, just like he was told to do. Willow ends up re-encountering Madmartigan, who is, when he finds him, is trying to disguise himself to get out of the consequences of one of his own actions, kind of showing that he's still kind of the person who got trapped in the cage. And he sees Willow and is more kind of shocked to see him than anything else. But doesn't really, apologize for losing the baby or any of those things. There's kind of there's a great scene, a great chase, really exciting. One of the things that I think is really key, though, is that Willow, who normally hesitates, jumps into action to save Alora Dannon, daringly grabbing the reins in a really difficult situation. And then he and Madmartigan help each other survive as they're escaping from Bavmorda's guards, who are chasing them. At the end, though, Willow is really upset with Madmartigan, and he proceeds to kind of lay into him and really, gets upset with him. But then he swallows his pride and asks for forgiveness, and then asks Madmartigan for help. Madmartigan, agrees to at least go as far as the lake. When they get to the lake, Rizal has been turned into a small possum-like creature, and Willow is kind of, shocked. And Rizal is astonished to find out that Willow is not a sorcerer. And she tells him that he has to learn how to use real magic. They're all captured by Bavmorda's soldiers as they're having this conversation, essentially. And Willow and Madmartigan are dragged off to Bavmorda's camp in chains. And we begin to see the change in Madmartigan that I think was inspired by the act of kindness of Willow. When Willow stumbles and falls down, Madmartigan picks him up and carries him on his shoulders on the way back to camp. There's a moment in camp where Willow's trying to change Finn Rizal back, and it doesn't quite go as planned.
For beginners, there's some pain, but don't let anything break your concentration.
Hither Green Van Clyde of Lunat. Hither Green Van Clyde of Lunat.
Losing me.
Hither Green Van Clyde of Lunat. Hither Green Van Clyde.
You all right? Nice try, Willow.
Farmers, Challenger sends me. Farmers.
I'm sorry, Rizal.
This reminded me of the prophet Amos, who was also a farmer. He was a tender of sycamore trees. He's from the southernmost part of Judah, yet he's called to preach to the northern kingdom of Israel, to call, speak truth to power for them, speak against the cruelty and oppression they visit on their own people. He has powerful words. From Amos 5, verses 21 through 24, I despise your festivals, and I take no delight in your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. And the offerings of well-being of your fatted animals I will not look upon. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the melody of your harps, but let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Later, when Willow does successfully transform Raziel back, she tells him that he has to believe in the words. She tells him he has to be the words in order to do that. And I think that's true of all of us who are called to speak truth to power. And all of us, because we proclaim the gospel to some degree, are called to live that good news out, and proclaim justice, proclaim love in the public square, right? So, going to jump ahead a bit. Madmartigan and Willow eventually manage to escape from the camp. And as they do so, one of the things, again, we see the growing heart of Madmartigan, who protectively shields Willow and Elora Danan as they sled down the mountain on a shield. It's one of those scenes that just sticks with you. Looks like it's a lot of fun right up until the very end when they crash. But they crash into a village at the foot of the mountain. They hide as Bavmorda's troops close in. They're still desperate to get the baby. When Madmartigan, is they're hiding. They run into one of Madmartigan's kind of old comrades, and this guy doesn't really almost recognize Madmartigan. Because of how he's changed, because of the things that he is doing now, the ways he's acting.
I've lost more than half my men fighting Bavmorda. Now you and this pack are gonna take her on? You always told me you served no one, Madmartigan. Since when are you a crusader? He's not gonna help you, Peck. He's a worthless thief. I'm not a thief, Eric.
He's not a thief.
Are you?
I served the Nelwyn, Eric. You want to come with us?
They manage to escape from Bavmorda's troops, and they go to, over and over again, they've been told to get to Tir Asleen. Tir Asleen, they'll be able to be safe. And that turns out not to be the case. There's really some great scenes there. And we see Willow really beginning to grow. He's willing to use the wand. He tries to use his magic. He tries to fight, in a significant way. But despite all that, despite even being willing to take up a sword to defend Elora, some of the soldiers manage to grab the child. And Willow is really kind of distraught and isn't really sure that it's worth continuing. He seems really frustrated. And it's, again, the kindness shown to Madmartigan, the mercy that Willow showed at the beginning comes back to him.
Elora! Willow!
Elora's gone.
Willow.
They've taken her. There were too many of them.
Willow. Can you ride? Let's ride.
They, along with the army of Madmartigan's comrade Eric, go to Bavmorda's fortress, where she has barricaded herself inside. Couple of things happen, but ultimately they're trying to figure out how to get in, and they can't do it. And it's Willow, in his role as farmer, not as sorcerer, that is able to help them have a plan. So they perform a clever ambush. They get inside the fortress, and Willow and Rizal and Sorsha, who's the daughter of Bavmorda, go up to confront Bavmorda. And as they do so, Willow, who has been gaining in confidence, still has a moment of doubt.
It's all right, Willow. You don't have to go.
Light the 13th candle!
You know, this is a great kind of climactic confrontation, and I was always thrilled with it. But as a kid, I especially missed how ahead of its time it is. Madmartigan, the handsome swordsman, is never a part of this conflict. Instead, it's 3 women, and 2 of them being older women, and a man with dwarfism who engage in this pivotal final battle. In some ways, it's very much the not typical people who are engaged in the major and important decisive conflict. Even today, I don't think there are many parallels in the kind of representation that's shown here. During this final conflict, one of the things that happens is Rizel and Bavmorda are wrestling for control of the wand, and it animates a tall cauldron. And what I didn't realize at the time is that when Willow jumps in to deal with this legged cauldron thing, this creature, which is snapping like a dog, he does so with a pitchfork, which is the same tool that the farmers in his village used. And so Willow, who had hid before after saving his daughter, but still had hid, now jumps in for the sake to save Elora. He's willing to fight a similar creature, in using the same kinds of tools that he would have then. In a lot of ways, Willow has grown. And it's ultimately the way that Willow manages to defeat Bavmorda is not with the power of awesome sorcery. The tools that he's been given by the High Aldwin and so on don't work against Bavmorda. Instead, he ends up tricking her by using the skills he already had: the prestidigitation, the sleight of hand, the misdirection. And it is in some ways by being completely himself that he's able to succeed. Just moving towards wrapping things up here. Our denouement has Tyr Asleen restored, and Elora Danan left with Sorsha and Madmartigan there. And Willow is given a book of magic by the sorceress Finn Rizel, who declares that he's going to be a great sorcerer someday. And then he returns home to his village. And when he enters the village, he's able to perform the kind of magic that the High Aldwin had performed at the beginning. He takes an apple from his backpack and throws it into the air, and it becomes a bird. So, this is a movie that I watch, regularly, and just it's grown on me over time how much faith, duty, and love really guide Willow's choices throughout this movie. When he's told by Cherlindrea in that clip that we saw that if Elora Danan didn't survive, that all creatures of good heart are in danger, despite his fears and his desire to see his family and his desire for safety, he lives up to his duty. When he sends his friend Migosh home, when he shows mercy on Madmartigan, when he chooses to trust Madmartigan, even though others call him a thief, or he's living out his faith. He's trusting other people, trusting that he himself is going to be enough. And by creating a space with that mercy and grace that he shows Madmartigan is also able to grow. He, instead of remaining the kind of person who acts selfishly and is focused only on what he can get and get out of, he is able to then grow to become someone better than he has been before. And from the beginning, his choice to follow, to try and help Elora Danan has been about love. His commitment to protecting his family was about love, and his willingness to continue to sacrifice, his own comfort and all of these things has always been about love. I think Paul says it best, right? Faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love, and love is what really inspires Willow. It helps him live out his faith. It helps him live out his duty. So it's Willow's commitment to faith and duty and love, and the guidance of his mentors that allow him to grow more fully into the person he was meant to be. Not just a sorcerer, but someone who doesn't let fear hold him back, who is willing to both be himself and defy someone of greater power, will defend those weaker than himself, and using whatever tools he's been given and the skills that he already possesses. Feel like this speaks to our own lives, where we face many challenges, and sometimes our faith is rocked by the events that happen around us. As we enter the third year of a pandemic, surely we have been sometimes questioning if we're the people who God created us to be, if all of this is what God means for it to be. When we question those kinds of things, though, it's almost as if we're expecting that creation to be a finished process, a one and done, right? As if there's a point where we become all that we're meant to be. And I think in our walk with Christ, as when we sometimes wonder if we're straight onto the wrong path or we'll ever reach the destination, we're actually if we'll reach the destination where we're perfectly, living into that Christ-likeness, right? Because that's part of the call, is to be more like Christ. And there never really is such a point. We continue to learn and struggle and grow throughout our lives all the way to the end of it. Though the movie Willow ends where it does, Willow will continue to learn and grow. And if he hews close to those three pillars that have guided him on his journey of love, faith, and duty, and if he continues to trust his heart and create space for grace to abound in the lives of others, he'll not only continue to become a greater sorcerer, father, husband, and even farmer, but will also, just as the High Aldwin did for him, as Willow already had done for Madmartigan, help others become more who they are meant to be as well. And I think that's part of our call. So I am now glad to answer any questions, or if there's anything else.
Well, thank you so much. That was awesome. And I haven't seen Willow in forever, and now I have to rewatch it.
On Disney Plus right now.
It's where right now?
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus. Excellent.
And there's actually a Willow TV series that's going to be coming out sometime later this year, which is, I think, kind of got me thinking in this direction in the first place.
Right. Oh, awesome. Well, yeah, it just made me, just even watching the clips, I was like, getting emotional. But I think it's amazing too that, that Willow was so eager or willing to believe in Madmartigan, and yet not in himself, right? But it's such a good story about how duty and morality act together. Like they have to act together, that without morality, duty is routine. And without duty, morality is just like wishful thinking. So it's such a great story to show that. So thank you.
I was excited as I was, beginning to think about this, and I saw what the theme of Doxacon was going to be, and I went, "Oh, I got a thing for this."
Nice. Oh, that's great. Questions we are able to take questions. Let's see, we have the Q&A spot. You can put your questions in that, or you can just put it in the chat, or you can also put it in the chat in Discord. So I have all of them open. But I'm trying to, think of a couple of different points. We talk, I love the focus on love in this film. Like even when, and I'm going to forget all the names, but even when the head sorcerer, like the bones made no sense without Willow loving this child.
It was why I titled the whole piece Bones Spoken. For me, it's the thing that shapes the whole rest of the movie. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we, the High Aldwin gets just a few minutes of screen time, but I mean, he's absolutely pivotal to the way that the movie unfolds, just in the way that he guides Willow into living out
excuse me. He does, he really, and his it also really begs the importance of community and being able to support each other. Like Willow could not have done this without support and encouragement, as none of us can walk alone in our own journeys, right?
This is where I think beloved community becomes really important. None of us is capable of being strong all the time. None of us is ever going to have all the answers. None of us is ever going to live all of the wisdom out perfectly, right? You know, we're going to struggle, we're going to stumble, and having people who are walking along with us, who can hold us up as we're falling down, and then whom we in turn can hold up when they're falling down, you know? Yeah. It's an interdependent thing, and it reminds us that we're not on the road alone. God is always with us, and sometimes shows up in the most ordinary people.
Often shows up in the most ordinary people. I mean, that's such a theme, right? Is that it isn't the person who desires that role or that power or anything like that. It's the person who's like, no. I don't know. I don't know if I can do this. There's a great line from Gladiator where Caesar tells Maximus, who is his best general, but is also a farmer. The farmer is just such a common shorthand for this, right? Someone of the earth, someone grounded and humble. Who Maximus is a farmer, and he tells Caesar, like, this is what I want to do. And Caesar says, except that I want you to be Caesar. And he said, I don't, and he says, like, I don't want to do this. I would beg you that you not ask this of me. And Caesar says, that's why it must be you. Is from that humility. That humility is really crucial, I think, to really be able to walk that path. Oh, someone had a comment up and then they took it down. Oh, there it is. Robert says they can't find themselves without others to serve. Can't find confidence in themselves till they focus on others. Yeah, it was more of a comment than a question, but yeah. And sometimes that is the case, right? Like it's hard to find our confidence. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, one of the things that Christ tells his followers, right, is that the way that you become the person you were meant to be, the way that you become the greatest, not the greatest person, but maybe the greatest version of yourself, right, is by serving, right?
Yeah.
This by this they shall know that you are my followers by the love you have for one another, right? I mean, and those are those guiding principles, and to me, one of the things that I love about pop culture, I had a professor in seminary, my first professor in seminary, actually, who said, God made us to have culture. And in many ways, that means God made culture. And because God made culture, culture points back to God. And, Willow, I think, really exemplifies that. Here we are, talking about these biblical themes that we find in this movie and the ways that these stories shape and form us.
Yes. Yeah. Even when it's not supposedly intended, and sometimes it's done best when it's not intended to be specifically religious, right? But I think that, I don't know, I guess the whole reason this conference exists is because all of us kind of recognize that the soul cries out for the divine. Yeah. Wow. All right. Do we have any, let's see, something's lit up, so I'm gonna, oops, that's not what it's supposed to be. Nope, no, maybe it was a comment. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Paul, you were gonna say something?
I was just going to say, somebody had asked about Hope Punk theology earlier,
yeah,
and so right. I did want to kind of go back to that.
Okay, yeah, that would be great.
Kind of an overview of Hope Punk theology. So the genre of Hope Punk is something that the author Alexandra Rowland kind of named, but really existed already. She was just kind of putting a name to it. She just had a quick Tumblr post that said, Hope Punk is the opposite of grimdark, pass it on. What inspired the Reverend Mindy Welton Mitchell and myself to really develop Hope Punk theology was the examples that she listed when she started talking about Hope Punk, because she wrote a whole essay kind of further detailing kind of her thoughts. And she listed as real world examples Jesus of Nazareth, right? And then the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was a Baptist minister, just like Mindy and myself are both Baptist ministers. Reverend Mindy and I are. And so we got the chance to that really sparked things for us. And so we started looking at what does it mean to look at our faith through the lens of Hope Punk. And the gospel is a very Hope Punk thing. One of there are themes that run through Hope Punk that are pretty important. And one of them is this idea that you are going to stand up to empire, whatever empire might be in a particular context, but the dominant power and the dominant culture, you're going to stand against it. And even though the way might be hard, and even though there might be sacrifice on the way, and even if you ultimately lose, the fact that you stood against it matters, and it changes things. After all, Christ was crucified. Empire won.
Right.
And then 3 days later, not so much, right? And that, I think, is part of the reason why Hope Punk so grabbed our attention. Hope Punk also, really lifts up the stories of people on the margins. So people of color, queer people, the people who women, and not just as characters in the stories, but especially creators. Hope Punk really allows these people to really come forward. N.K. Jemisin wrote the Broken Earth trilogy, and she released each of these 3 books in subsequent years and won the Hugo for each of them. I read the series. She deserved the Hugo. The Broken Earth trilogy really is an exceptional example of kind of Hope Punk, literature. And it was one of those things that it centers. N.K. Jemisin is herself African American, and the story centered people of color, but without making it that wasn't the defining attribute. It happened to have people of color as the main characters of the story, and very often that happens in Hope Punk stories. And kind of a third major theme of Hope Punk is this idea of found family, right? Or of friendships that matter, that love matters, right? And so in that way, you could look at a story like Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? And you want to talk about found family, and you want to talk about how love shapes, a group of people to support and so on. But we found this all exciting and related it to the gospel. We related it to the story of the early church in Acts, which continually grew and expanded its definition of who is included in the church and continues to do so even today, right? And even we have prophets like Jeremiah and so on that we reference in the paper, who do these things in the face of empire. That seem to make no sense and yet bring hope. And so if you want to see that talk, you can. It's been recorded and it's up on YouTube, and I recommend that you go there. But also, we have a Hope Punk Theology group on Facebook, and I want to invite you to join that. The conversation continues there. We have the conversation as things come up. They get posted there, and then we also every other month have a Hope Punk Theology online gathering, which is an interfaith gathering where we get together and we talk about how Hope Punk intersects with our lives of faith. And those lives of faith, ecumenical Christian and Jewish and other traditions as well. And so that has been a very fruitful way to engage. We talked about Hope Punk in video games, a couple of back in December, and at the beginning of this month, we were talking about Hope Punk and the cyclical nature of Hope Punk, because to some degree, a Hope Punk story is always set in a grimdark world, and it's not a happily ever after, but more of we've defeated evil this time, and that just makes the world a better place, but that doesn't mean that the evil will never return. And so there's kind of a cyclical nature to it. And so I just wanted to lift up those examples, and I'll invite you to join us for that.
Yeah, in fact, what we can do is put a link to the Hope Punk Theology Facebook page in the chat for your talk. Great. And I've actually taken part in a couple of these conversations, and sadly I have to work on Wednesday nights now. So, but it's really fruitful and very enlightening, and the conversations are just fantastic. So, thank you so much for doing that and for continuing that community. It's 3:28, so I'm going to give I guess some people time. Oh, there we go. Robert already got to it for me. So I'm going to give people a couple minutes to do a bio break. We are going to come back for our final session. And I hope you can join us. Paul, I know that you're in the middle of something else as well today.
I was glad to be able to step away and join you, and thank you for allowing me to the space to share with you all. And I look forward to continuing to see what Doxacon and Doxacon Seattle have to bring. So
yes,
here.
All right. Well, I will email you with some of the announcements that we're going to make in the next hour. So
sounds great. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for being here.
Bye.
Bye-bye.